Marine Enthusiast Podcast, a podcast about marine biology and all things ocean. I'm your host for today, Guinevere, and today we are rather lucky to be joined by environmental activist and chair of Surfrider Chicago, Devin McAllester. Devin, would you like to say hello?
Hello, thanks for having me.
Wonderful, yes. So, Devin, what sparked your passion for the ocean and for marine science in general?
Yeah, so I've always liked the water. I grew up, playing on the beach, going kayaking, playing in the waves. I grew up mostly in the Chicago area, so I like to play on Lake Michigan. I moved away for a long time, and then I came back maybe 3 years ago and got back into surfing. And through that, I've sort of gotten more and more involved in environmental advocacy, and eventually that led to my current position at Surfrider.
That's wonderful. So, what sparked your passion for surfing specifically? I know that's very popular in the Chicago area.
Yeah, I don't know how popular it is in the Chicago area. I mean, there are people who surf around here. We don't get that many days compared to the ocean. Like you might get 3 or 4 or 5 maybe days a month where you can go surfing. But surfing is why do I love surfing? That's a very good question. It's the right mix of like being outside, something that's exciting, and there's sort of an art to it that I really like. It's not something that you can sort of just instantly pick up. You're always sort of honing your skills. And the feeling of sliding down a wave is something else. Is next level. So I don't know. I like it.
Well, I've lived in Los Angeles. I agree 100%. I've lived in Los Angeles all my life, so I've had the pleasure of knowing a lot of surfers. I've always had trouble understanding what makes people, tick about it. I don't surf personally.
Have you tried it? Have you gone surfing?
I have not. I plan to soon. I'm more interested in scuba diving, which I don't currently do either. All
right.
My connection to the ocean right now is mostly walking along the beach and or going swimming in the waves. So, was there any particular person, place, moment, or piece of media that assisted in the sparking of your passion?
Yeah, so in terms of if we're talking about like environmental advocacy and community organizing, so I moved back to the Chicago area in 2023. And then in 2020, I want to get my dates right here. I want to say 2024, a beach that's near where I live that used to be free started charging people to get on the beach. So you used to be able to just walk onto the beach if you wanted to, go for a stroll. Swimming wasn't allowed, but if you wanted to just go for a stroll like you described, it was totally free and open to the public. And then in 2024, they started charging. So if you didn't live in that village, you had to pay like $10 a person to get on the sand. And I sort of felt that was deeply unfair. And because I was a surfer, and Surfrider works on beach access, Surfrider seemed like the kind of organization that might help work on that. So as I started working on trying to make that beach free again, I started attending Surfrider events. And that's sort of what kicked off my path to where I currently am, and sort of lit the spark in terms of environmental advocacy and community organizing.
That's wonderful. Wow. And I agree with you. That is deeply unfair. Wow. $10 per person?
What actually gets worse than that? I'll look up the rate so I don't misquote them. So I don't know how much you know about Chicago, but essentially the city of Chicago, the whole lakefront pretty much is free and open to the public. Most of it, like, the vast majority of it. And then if you go north of the city, you move into the suburbs. And most suburban communities from essentially Evanston to Waukegan have varying fees and parking restrictions and other restrictions that are sort of either by design or certainly in effect, they exclude people who don't live in those communities. So the beach that I was talking about in Wilmette, I think it's $10 a person. Let me get these fees up. So, like another village, Lake Forest, if you are a non-resident, then it's $25 a day per person to get onto the beach. And if you want to park near the beach, it's $910. There's no daily like parking there. And then the nearest free parking would be about three-quarters of a mile from the beach. So that's just one example. So each municipality, as you go up the beach, Evanston, Wilmette, Kenilworth, Winnetka, Glencoe, they all have sort of similar fee structures and parking restrictions that sort of make those beaches hard for people to access who don't live in those communities.
Wow. That $25 per person per wow. I'm very unused to paid beaches where I live. Most of the California coastline is free. Parking is ludicrous, but I mean, there's street parking. You can take your chances with that. So, hearing about these beaches, which you have to pay to access along the East Coast and in the Great Lakes, is always, it's an experience that I just don't understand. I understand charging that much if it contributes to the preservation of the dunes on the beach or of the local flora and fauna. However, anything else, I sort of see it as a way for the municipality to squeeze more money out of people.
Yeah, no, I think there are definitely multiple motivations. I think one motivation is to make money, right? Like you can use the beach almost as an amusement park, as a cash cow. And I think some of the municipalities do that. But I think that the sort of most extreme municipalities, the ones that have the highest fees, they're not really making that much money. I could be wrong, but intuitively, I don't think they're actually making that much money because so few people actually like pay, so few people find it worth it to pay such high fees. And so in effect, and again, who knows exactly why they do this, but the effect is mostly to exclude more than it is to make money. And if you think about, you talked about walking on the beach in the LA area and going swimming in the waves. If you think about why people care to protect the ocean, why do people care to protect the Great Lakes? Most of the time, it's because they get to go enjoy them, whether that's walking on the beach or surfing or scuba diving. And if you have these fee structures that exclude people and they're sort of disconnected from the water, then there's less of that incentive to actually protect it. And so I think that, with Surfrider, one interesting thing about our nonprofit is that we sort of see the connection between recreation, like surfing, and actually the environmental advocacy and protection. That, you sort of need both. They go hand in hand. In order to recreate, it needs to be protected, and sort of the recreation can motivate the activism.
That's incredible. And I agree with that thoroughly. A lot of people say that, they found their passion for marine science in the waves, or they found it in tide pools. And you're completely right. When people feel excluded from these watersheds, they don't feel a need or an incentive to protect them. So this next question, I feel, can reveal a lot about a person, and it's one of my favorite to ask. What is your favorite terrestrial or marine animal?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this. I'm going with mourning dove. See, in my backyard, there's all sorts of birds. We have a little koi pond, and they like to come and take a bath. And the mourning doves, they always seem just so relaxed and calm, and they're very sort of like docile, humble birds. They're not very showy. Other birds are kind of jerks, like the grackles, the blackbirds. They like attack other birds. The mourning doves, they've got this nice kind of call that I really like. I don't know. It's a very chill, friendly bird. I'm going with that. That's my favorite animal.
As you should. That's wonderful. So, how would you describe the Surfrider Foundation to someone who isn't familiar?
Yeah, so as I said, we're an environmental nonprofit, and we're an environmental nonprofit that really weds sort of wave, wind, human-powered water sports with environmental activism. So we work on beach access, right? Helping people access the water. We have fun events, learn to surf days, paddle out, surfing competitions. And then we also work really hard on clean water, whether that's fighting industrial pollution or that's fighting plastic pollution, working with restaurants to reduce single-use plastics, that sort of thing. So it's an environmental nonprofit, but there's also sort of this fun side.
That's that's incredible. So, how did you join Surfrider Chicago, and what is your current position with them?
Yeah, so I started going to Surfrider events in 2024 when I was starting to work on this beach access issue in Wilmette. Um, and I attended a few events that summer, and then in let's see now, that following January, like January of 2025, they needed some help. The local chapter needed some help with the website and their email system, and so I started doing that. I became their communications coordinator, and then in January of this past year, we had elections, and I became the chair. So I'm now the chair of our Chicago chapter.
That's incredible. Wow. And what are your responsibilities in your capacity as chair?
There was a bit of a skip there, so I think I missed that question. Can you repeat it?
Oh, yes, of course. What are your responsibilities in your capacity as chair?
Oh, yeah. So a few different things. I lead our executive committee, so we have a whole leadership team, and everyone has different roles. So we have our social media coordinator, Milo, manages our Instagram and Facebook content. We've got Ted, who's our volunteer coordinator, and he does a lot of our event planning. We've got Quentin, that that's our vice chair, and Quentin's helping with our water testing program. So I help coordinate the efforts of all of our leadership team. And I also serve as a spokesman for the chapter. So, if ABC wanted to do a piece on our beach cleanups, for instance, then I would help coordinate that and might do some interviews. I help set the direction, so kind of picking like what we work on. Obviously, we decide as a team, but I kind of steer that process. Let's see. I think those are sort of the big things, and then sort of coordinating and managing our campaigns and programs, making sure everything's running smoothly, all that good stuff.
That's wonderful. So, how many people exactly do you have on your executive committee?
Yeah, so it's there's 9 people on the executive committee, and then we have um, 2 folks that are not on the executive committee but lead programs. So we have Kyle, who runs our Great Lakes Friendly Restaurants program, and we have Glenn, who we have a program where we table at concerts, and Glenn runs that. And then we got our 9-person executive committee.
Wow, that's fascinating. And you mentioned your Great Lakes Friendly Restaurant program. So, how would you describe that program? What is the goal of it?
Yeah, so the idea is essentially that a lot of single-use plastics uh, come from dining. If you imagine going and getting takeout, right? There's a plastic cake takeout container. They toss some plastic silverware in your bag. There's the plastic little remkins that they put sauces in. Oftentimes there's a plastic bag. And so the idea is to collaborate with restaurants to both recognize the restaurants that have eliminated the single-use plastics, but just as importantly, to help restaurants reduce that single-use plastic and certify that they've put in that effort. And there are incentives for restaurants. So we offer discounts on restaurant supplies. So if you wanted to buy like stainless steel remkins or paper straws, if you are a participating restaurant, you would get discounts. So it's collaborative, and the goal is to recognize restaurants for their hard work in reducing single-use plastics, and then also to help steer them towards alternatives.
That's incredible. Wow. And you offer vendor discounts? Do you offer any other sorts of recognition apart from, a certification they can place on their website?
Yeah, so we offer discounts. We try to promote them on our social media accounts like Instagram and our website. They get a sticker, a decal that they put on, the front of the restaurant. We also have a dashboard on our website where you can see Great Lakes Friendly Restaurants. So, like, let's say I was visiting San Diego and I was like, oh, I want to grab lunch. Or I was visiting LA, for instance. I could go on Surfrider's website and then find out on the coast. They don't call it Great Lakes friendly restaurants; they call it ocean friendly restaurants. But I could find an ocean friendly restaurant and choose that as where I get lunch, so that I'm supporting a restaurant that's working on reducing plastics.
That's wonderful. That's a very innovative way of doing things. So, taking us into one of your other programs, one I think Quentin is leading, how would you describe your Blue Water Task Force program?
Yeah, so the idea behind the Blue Water Task Force is that water testing at public swimming beaches usually has gaps. And so one gap could be seasonal, which is the gap that we have in Chicago, right? They test the water in the summer, fall comes, and the park district stops testing, but people are still going in the water. And so the idea behind the Blue Water Task Force is to fill those gaps in water quality testing at public beaches. Um, and so in Chicago, we're trying to start up a program, and Quentin's leading that effort to test at a few beaches in the off season, so fall and spring. There are a lot of people, especially in the fall when the water's warm, who are still going in the water. Water quality in Chicago varies wildly day to day. If you imagine, like, if we haven't had a lot of rain for a long time, the water quality can be really good. You can have that sort of nice crystal clear blue water. If we get a lot of rain, it can get murky, and it can be a little hard to tell whether or not that water is safe, in terms of bacteria levels. And so the goal is to start testing the water at, for our different chapters do it differently. For our chapter, our goal is to test at 3 beaches in the fall and the spring, once a week, and then that information will be available to the public through our website.
That's wonderful. Wow. So you're really focused on sort of making up where the municipality or, the county lacks.
Yeah, so sorry, I hope I didn't cut you off. There's a bit of a jitter,
Oh, no,
but
no, no. You
but
didn't.
yes.
Continue.
Okay, cool. Um, yeah, I mean the hard thing for municipalities across the country, and the public agencies that test water quality, is the funding, right? Like, testing water is expensive. And so a lot of the gaps are just because there isn't really the funding to do it. Um, so, with our nonprofit, through our donations, we're able to um, sort of fill some of those gaps, not all of those gaps. But ultimately, anywhere you go around the country, there are going to be gaps because water quality testing is expensive.
That's very true. Yes. So, guiding us into another one of your programs, one that's focused on mitigating pollution on land before it enters the Great Lakes, how would you describe your beach cleanup program, and how often do you conduct beach cleanups?
Yeah, so we conduct maybe, let's see here, I don't know, a half dozen to a dozen beach cleanups a year, probably close to a dozen, mostly in the summer, but also some in the spring and the fall. And the goal of the beach cleanups is really sort of twofold, I would say, or maybe threefold. Obviously, when you clean a beach, you're taking all of this mostly plastic garbage off the beach. So you're making it prettier. You're reducing sort of the plastic pollution. You're preventing it from breaking down into those nasty microplastics and contaminating the water. So that's definitely an aspect. But I think another really big aspect is just educating the public. If someone attends a beach cleanup and they go down the beach and they fill a bucket with a whole bunch of broken up plastic, they get to see firsthand, like, just how bad this single use plastic pollution problem really is. And in sort of a visceral way that's going to stick with them a lot more than some statistic. And then I think the third prong of our beach cleanup program is really collecting data from all of the chapters around the country, right? Surfrider has like 200 chapters and clubs. And then we aggregate that data, and it's available on our website. And it really helps us communicate to policymakers the scale of the issue. To say, like, we found, X pounds of foam takeout containers on beaches this year, would help us communicate to a policymaker that actually, foam takeout containers are a serious problem.
That's very true. And that is very important in the issue of marine policy and leads us very nicely into my next question. So, type 6 plastic, polystyrene, as I'm sure you know, is one of the most destructive kinds of plastic due to its tendency to fragment and get everywhere. You know, if you've ever handled a styrofoam takeout container, you'll be well familiar with this. So, Surfrider Chicago is currently working to ban the sale of foam food service containers in the state of Illinois. So, do you mind guiding us through your Ban the Foam, Save the Shore program?
Yeah, so there's currently a bill that's being considered at the state level to ban polystyrene foam food service containers. And that bill was sort of brought to life by a broad coalition of environmental groups. And, Surfrider is doing what it can to support that effort, advocating for that bill. As I said, and as you mentioned, like foam breaks down easily, and it breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces without ever really going away, which is sort of a pretty big problem, right? Especially when you're thinking about water. And so a foam container that ends up in the lake, it doesn't biodegrade like a paper container. Instead, you end up with all these microplastics that end up in our water supply. They end up in the fish and the birds. And so, yeah, we're very hopeful that the state of Illinois will pass this bill and that foam food service containers will become a thing of the past.
I hope that too. And you are correct. The microplastics end up everywhere in all of the marine life. A lot of people don't seem to think that. They think that microplastics just get smaller and then they go away. But that's not the case. They end up in everything, including us.
Yep, unfortunately.
Yes. So I know that you all are involved in the Sustain the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. How would you describe your involvement in it?
Yes, I actually don't know as much about this one because a lot of our involvement in um, that restoration initiative happens at sort of the national level. So the way that Surfrider works is we have volunteer-led chapters, and then we have a team of staff members that not only oversees those chapters, but then also does a lot of work that chapters might not have the time or resources for. And so we have a wonderful staff member, part of the team, Sarah Damron, who's our Great Lakes Regional Manager. And she definitely has worked on the restoration initiative a lot more than I have. So I can't say too much about it. I don't know enough about it to speak to that one.
Fair enough. So, as chair of Surfrider Chicago, one of the larger chapters, I'm sure your schedule must be very busy. What does your schedule look like week to week or day to day?
Yeah, so I'm a volunteer, so you have to sort of set some boundaries. You can't spend your whole life, as much as I'd like to, perhaps, on Surfrider and the environmental advocacy and the beach access issues. Um, I think that we've got a lot going on. We have the beach access issues. We have industrial pollution down in Indiana. We have our water testing program. It's all these things that really need our attention, plus sort of the administrative coordination work. And so I think that the biggest challenge for me is just being able to like focus my time on a particular issue and really giving it the attention that it needs. I think sometimes it's easy to be like, okay, well, I'm going to spend 15 hours on Surfrider this week, but then it's sort of all, you spend an hour here and an hour there, it all sort of trickles away. So I think, I'm pretty new to being the chair. I've only been the chair for, not even quite 6 months yet. So I'm still sort of figuring that out. But in terms of my day to day, it's sort of I slide in Surfrider stuff where I can, when it's needed. Um, and I do my best to give all our various programs and campaigns my attention.
That is fair. I completely agree with you. It's very difficult to manage all of those things, I imagine, concurrently and, manage your life in addition to that. A lot of people think that environmental activists or scientists are just people scheming in laboratories all day, but that's not true. They have lives and families and things to attend to apart from their craft.
For sure.
Yes. So we talked a lot about Surfrider Chicago today, and I'm sure that some of our listeners will feel inspired. If someone were interested in volunteering with Surfrider Chicago, how would they approach you all?
Yeah, so we have a calendar of events on our website. And so a great first step is to attend one of our beach cleanups, attend one of our fun events, one of our Learn to Surf days, or we have a like sea glass collection, rock collection event coming up this weekend. Any of those are great opportunities to get involved. You can also, on our website, there is a volunteer interest form where you can give us your contact information. If you're interested in volunteering on the beach access issues or you're interested in working on the clean water issues, you can fill out that form and we'll get back to you with ways that you can help out.
That's wonderful. Yes. So, as chair, what are your plans for the chapter in the coming months or years?
Yeah. So, what are the plans for the chapter? So, I think that obviously we want to grow. I think that Surfrider is really a place for anyone who loves the lake. Surfrider Chicago is, and I think that right now we're not reaching the full breadth of lake love that we could. There's all sorts of groups that love the lake. There are kayakers and paddleboarders and fishermen and scuba divers and snorkelers. So one really big goal of mine, kiteboarders, wing foilers, is to bring all of those groups together so that we can collectively accomplish more in terms of access, in terms of environmental protection, in terms of advocacy. I see Chicago as really sort of a beach city, just like LA, right? And I think that it hasn't fully realized that beach city potential. And one of my big goals is just helping more and more people get out there to enjoy the water.
As you should. Wow, that is an incredible goal. And I agree. A lot of people underestimate the beauty of the Great Lakes until they see it for themselves. So, what has
Have you ever come out here?
I have not. I would like to though. There's a conference there that I've been wanting to attend, but I have not visited Chicago thus far.
You should come out. Great.
I I will. I very much would like to. The Great Lakes are beautiful and very interesting places, and they're very biodiverse, and a lot of people don't realize that. So I would very much like to visit Chicago sometime soon. So, what has been the biggest triumph or proudest moment across your career or involvement with Surfrider?
Yeah, that's a tricky question because, as I said, I've only been the chair for about 6 months. I was on the executive committee for about a year before that as the communications coordinator, helping with some of their technical stuff, the website, the emails, and also organizing events and just general work on our campaigns and programs. So I sort of feel like we're at this position, or I'm at this position, but also the chapter is where we're sort of building steam and heading towards our goals, but we haven't sort of fully realized them. So, I'm super proud of everything that we've done. And actually, now that I'm saying this, I will pick a moment, which is last fall. We organized a Learn to Surf Day with a group called Latino Outdoors. So Latino Outdoors is a nonprofit that helps the Latino community get outside and enjoy the great outdoors. And Latino Outdoors Chicago is led by wonderful organizer Vicky, and we collaborated with her to host this Learn to Surf Day. There were 17 participants, 12 volunteer surf instructors, and there weren't any waves, but everyone had a blast. turns out you don't actually need waves to start to learn to surf. You can have people practice on the beach, practicing standing up, practice their pop-ups. They can practice paddling. Um, so I think people had a really great time, and it's really awesome to see people sort of try surfing for the first time and dip their toes in the water and get excited about it, and see that sort of connection growing between them and the water, the lake.
That's wonderful. And I imagine that must have been, very fulfilling to see people realizing the beauty that the Great Lakes have to offer and really connecting with it.
Yeah, it's great.
That's wonderful. So you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I still feel the urge to ask. I'm sure that you've faced just as many challenges and setbacks as you have leaps forward. What would you say has been the biggest hurdle or challenge that you've faced across your career, and how have you overcome it?
All right, let me think about this one for a second. I think that the biggest challenge um, for anyone working on environmental protection or beach access is feeling like, there's nothing that can be done. Hopelessness is the biggest challenge. And I think that the more ingrained the status quo is, the harder it is to overcome that feeling that actually it just sort of is the way it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so I would say that although this is a little bit perhaps um, less tangible than like a specific incident, I would say that in terms of just the biggest challenge that I guess I have overcome and continue to overcome is just believing that actually a positive difference can be made, that we actually can do something, and that it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be the case that people are charged $25 to get on the beach. It doesn't have to be the case that our water is filled with all this plastic garbage, that we really can do something about it and will do something about it, and that there will come a day where it's not the case.
Yes, I
I think you
wholeheartedly
froze.
agree. Oh, my apologies. I
Oh,
think I
I think you're
did.
back now, though.
It's all
I
right.
think it's okay.
Okay. Yes. So I agree. I think that lack of optimism and hopelessness is a particularly pervasive problem these days, especially in the environmental community. And I agree. Oh, I think it's very important to keep your hopes up. So,
I,
unfortunately, we are approaching the end of today's interview. What would you say is your advice to new ocean conservationists, aspiring ocean professionals, and young, passionate people looking to make an impact on the sea, or in your case, the lake?
yeah. What would my advice be? Um, I would say my advice is that they should, whatever it is that they want to accomplish, whether that's eliminating single-use plastics, fighting plastic pollution, fighting industrial pollution, beach access. I would say just start working at it and don't give up. That's my advice.
Very useful advice. So, thank you for sitting down with us today, Devin. I really do appreciate you taking the time. Do you have any final words about marine science, the Surfrider Foundation, the beauty of the lake, or ocean or lake conservation?
There's some parting words. Um, I would say if you're listening to this and you live near the water, when you're done listening to it, you should go to the beach. Enjoy the day. That's my parting words. Is work hard to protect it, but then also go enjoy it.
I agree with that. I think that a lot of people get, caught up in conservation or these sort of abstract things and forget that you can also, enjoy the beach. You don't have to make every visit count, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it can just be fun.
That's very true. So, sadly, that brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed this lovely interview. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like and follow us for more exciting episodes such as these. With that being said, this has been the Marine Enthusiast Podcast. Goodbye, marine enthusiasts.